Hey, this is Jake D, and I am live with Valgyr. We are going to talk about a spoiler-filled stream on the Umbrella Academy Season 2. Val, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hello, everybody. I'm Valgyr. If I spend any time streaming or recording videos, it's mostly for games, but I do enjoy a good number of movies and television shows like The Umbrella Academy.
Outstanding. Well, I'll tell you, I am very glad to have you here. Appreciate you joining. So I want to
Oh,
start
my
out.
pleasure.
And thank you. So I want to start out the first little bit. Let us hear your initial thoughts, reaction to finishing the Umbrella Academy Season 2.
Well, it was an interesting road. I really, really enjoyed it from start to finish, but a few of the things I just got to point out, the writing was spectacular. Um, some of the character portrayals, the acting was always, as always, very good. Um, I mean, just keeping it brief and pretty shallow. Music selection was probably one of the best parts about it. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Just to summarize, really.
Outstanding, man. I am right there with you. One of the things that I really loved, just to echo your comment, that just like with season one, the music selection was absolutely top notch throughout. Every piece of it just it fit perfectly with the scenes that they were putting it into, and set the right mood. Plus, it was great music, which doesn't hurt.
For the most part, there were a couple in there that were kind of like, all right, come on, really, guys. But with those two, one or two as an exception, it's like, yeah, no, this is amazing.
Excellent, man. So, talk to me about what do you think about Five's arc throughout the season?
Well, I wasn't expecting that one. Okay, so all right. We're about to step into spoiler territory already. Look at this. Okay, so Five. First off, we're seeing Five. He's thoroughly confused about what's going on because he dropped into the middle of a war zone. And the last thing that happened to him was he opened up a portal to save all of his siblings from the impending apocalypse. From the end of season one. So yeah, he gets dropped in the middle of this war zone. Hazel shows up, and I love the actor that plays Hazel. I've never seen him do a bad job. And once again, he shows up and is just like, to the effect of "Come with me if you want to live." A little bit of exposition, which I mean, some would see that as weak writing, but it was necessary to an extent, and they didn't overdo it, which is very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And it was, getting to see Hazel for me was an unexpected treat, right? I mean, we did get a brief glimpse of him in the trailer, and that was the first, even whisper that there was that he was going to be in there. And I mean, he was one of my favorite characters in season one. So even in just a little cameo, just enjoyed the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, and the overextending character arc with Hazel was just outstanding through season one, and they did an excellent job of bringing that to a head. And it's like, this is what we planned for Hazel. This was his life, and that was awesome. But back to your question about Five. So Five has got to deal with a lot of. I mean, he's got to deal with a lot of the guilt and a lot of the pressure, and you know, I mean, he's how old is he supposed to be? 50 something, right?
58.
58. 58-year-old man, and he feels as though he literally has the weight of the world on his shoulders for all of season one, even though he's stuck in the body of a 10-year-old boy. Yeah. And then season two, it's all starting over again. It's like, okay, so I tried to do this to save the world. and I immediately drop into the world ending again. You got to be thinking, as 5, what the hell is wrong with me? How did I screw this up this badly again?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because this, what's all happening in season 2, it's the result of the close of season 1, right? And the introduction of Doomsday really was absolutely the fault of him bringing everybody back, and more specifically him himself, right? And so having 5, really, to your point, being the guy who caused, once again, the end of the world, right?
Right.
And, if he doesn't gather everybody back together and get things moving, we may very well not reach the doomsday that Hazel showed him.
Something else to note, what we kind of touched on there, a whole lot of causality paradox in the first season. I mean, the whole first season was a causality paradox.
Yeah. So for somebody who doesn't know, what's a causality paradox?
That's one of those fun ones. Okay, so a causality paradox would basically be, and it always has to do with time travel, but in order, trying to prevent something from occurring causes the thing to occur. So you go back in time to try to stop something, and the series of events that occur from you going back in time and the changes you've made force the thing to occur. It also kind of follows the law of unintended consequences, because obviously you were trying to stop the thing, but if we really look at it from a grand scheme of things, if 5 didn't go back in time or forward in time from his, now we're getting complicated. He came from old man 5 when he appeared in season 1 through the portal to try to prevent the apocalypse at the very beginning of season 1, set in motion the chain of events that were going to lead to the apocalypse.
Yes. And then,
or at least help to, because one could almost argue that the real inciting factor was Reginald Hargreaves offing himself to bring the kids back together.
Sure. And then we're presented with a similar problem in season 2.
Exactly. We're presented with the exact same problem. Almost, well, I mean,
it's deja vu all over again.
Right. So, all of the siblings appear back in the 60s, arriving at different points in time in the 60s, but all in the same alleyway. And, they go on to basically lead their own separate lives. And then 5 comes back, sees that, Doomsday is coming, goes back about a week and a half. What do you say, 10 days? Goes 10 back days. 10 days. And is going to try to prevent all of this by bringing the siblings back together, and the series of events that happens is what's going to bring it about in the first place.
Yeah. It would, to me, that is good fun in the show. It gets us thinking about things like this, and what if this, what if that, what if he's done something slightly different, right? All this could change, which is one of the fun parts about these time travel shows, like what we're seeing here.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of the things that I think keeps the viewer interested, keeps people going and being a part of what we're watching.
Most definitely. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the fight scene in Doomsday.
Oh, which one? there were. Are you talking about the Luther fight scenes, or are you talking about the one at the very beginning where you get to see everybody?
The one in the very beginning where you get to see everybody.
Okay. Yes, and that is such an amazing scene. Okay, so, you get to see all of the members of the Umbrella Academy, even Ben, and you get to see them express their powers a lot more than you have in season 1 or season 2, with the exception of Vanya. Vanya, you got to see her power pretty well in season 1. But yeah, I mean, you've got Vanya basically uses an outward explosion of sound to destroy and knock back a tank shell that was fired at her. Klaus is going up against a small unit of guys and ends up calling up his own small unit of ghostly fellows, soldiers that just overwhelm him. It was almost like that scene from Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah,
with Aragorn. Remember that
when he brings in the ghost army to fulfill their vow, right? That's a good comparison. That I hadn't thought of that. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah,
I just thought of that. You also get to see Luther. He takes an RPG to the back, thoroughly displeased about it, but that man is indestructible. Ben's doing his Eldritch Tentacle thing up on top of a building, which is kind of weird, but he's still the ghostly blues, so it's obvious he's still, not with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the thing that I'm most excited about, and this kind of harkens back to the source material. So Allison, you get to see Allison using her rumor ability, right? But it's not like
a way we've never seen before.
Right, unless you read the source material, because it was that way in the source material. So for those that haven't read the source material, the Umbrella Academy Dark Horse comic series, Allison's ability is not so much the ability to manipulate people's minds by saying, I heard a rumor, but to manipulate reality in itself. So she can say, I heard a rumor, and then whatever she says, it becomes the reality. Yeah, including manufacturing things out of thin air. There was one of them in the comic series where they were fighting a giant monument of Abe Lincoln, and she says, I heard a rumor that you were assassinated, and a giant statue of John Wilkes Booth appears behind him and shoots him. That is more akin to the traditional what her powers were in the series, in the comic book series. And you get to see some of that in that first fight scene when Allison is facing 3 guys and they've all got their guns pointed at her, and she says, I heard a rumor that I blew your minds, and then their heads explode. It's very gratifying.
Loved that scene, and it was, oddly, it was the most graphic in terms of violence or gore scene in the entire show, right? But I loved it. Because one of the things, while she can sort of tell people to do stuff, and you see that a bunch of times throughout both seasons of the show, but that image of her actually using it to physically directly affect people, that was great.
That was great. I loved it.
Among all the siblings in that first fight, though, personal favorite, Diego. Which of course we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh yeah, we haven't gotten to yet. So, there was kind of an ongoing question for me in season 1, and as well as part of season 2. And I didn't watch it in 4K. And if you haven't watched it, which you should have, because you're watching a spoiler stream right now, but Diego's powers were always kind of a mystery. It seemed like, super agility. That'd be really, really cool. But when he throws his projectiles and they curve and they hit something, you could almost attribute that to something akin to a Bullseye from the Marvel universe. Sure. Who would be able to make shots like that. And, so yeah, he's got super agility, which makes sense considering his fighting prowess and everything else. But that's not actually his ability.
It's not even close.
Right. You get to see it in that first scene during the fight when he's got 10 or 15 guys surrounding him, firing fully automatic weapons at him. And he does this jump spin maneuver, and you see all of the bullets in slow-mo just kind of
they're
curve their
changing
trajectories.
Yeah,
And
it was
and hitting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
missed that the first time around because I was watching on a small screen.
I did too.
And yeah, and so Val and I, we were watching it on a big 4K screen during our second watch through, and wow, because those little bullets, if you're watching it on your computer screen or on your phone or a tablet or even a small TV, you don't pick up on seeing
It's
them
one of those
all.
details that's so easy to miss.
Yeah, they're bending around him, and as he's jumping off of it was an APC or a tank or something, and that was just great effects. I loved it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And so that kind of put to rest the question that I had later on in the series when you're facing Diego, and he did something similar but to a much more clear and obvious effect. And it's like, oh, so that's his ability. But you could see it earlier in the series, and I'd completely missed it because I was watching on too small a screen.
So yeah. I mean, seeing it on a larger screen, highly recommend it because there's little details like that we just miss, when it's on the smaller screens that unfortunately a lot of us use to watch, our Netflix and things like that anymore.
Oh, another detail that I missed that you didn't, we were talking about this earlier, was the newspaper that Five picks up.
Yes.
Yeah, the newspaper that Five picks up that basically says Soviets invade USA, JFK declares war on Russia. I completely missed that because I couldn't make it out, and it didn't click to me like, hey, maybe I should actually try to read what this says. But that turns into a kind of important point.
Oh, you bet it does, and it reverberates throughout the rest of the season, right? Because Diego, now that he's back in the 60s, he has made it his personal mission that he's going to save JFK from assassination.
Which is ironic because his brother Five was the one that was trying to kill him before he changed his mind and jumped through the portal.
right. Yeah. So he's obviously planning to put himself against his own brother. Although I'm not sure it was ever
think that he was aware.
That's where I was going. I'm not sure it was clear that Diego ever knew that. But so as we're going through that, I picked up on the paper because in the first season, again, Five had a newspaper that gave him some important information in order to figure out what the hell he's supposed to do. I guess for that reason, my eye keyed on that paper and noticed the fact that, wait a minute, JFK is alive longer than he should have been. But I mean, well, there's a good segue into talking a bit about Diego and what he's been up to. And so all the siblings show up at different points in the timeline because Five can't narrow it down that well. I mean, we saw that when he leaped forward too far into the future. And then when he zips them back to the past to avoid the apocalypse, they end up scattered across the early 60s. And, everybody's setting up their own lives because they can't find any of their brothers and sisters, which, I mean, hell, that's what I would do.
Well, yeah. I mean, what choice do you have? I mean, you're just going to set up a tent across the street? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, there was that homeless alley guy. You could have hung out with him.
Yeah, there was that guy.
So, I mean, Diego really, he continues his identity that we really saw in the first season, where he's taking an approach somewhat to vigilante justice, and he's given himself this mission to save Kennedy, because from his point of view, things got all messed up because of Kennedy's death.
Well, something I just thought of that I find really kind of interesting. I mean, everybody's been posed with the question that, if you could just start over somewhere, what would you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this does a really good job of answering that question, and I think they did it pretty accurately based on what we've seen on the characters and their personality types.
Sure.
if you could start over in a different time, different place, what would you do? And we that's what we see happen. Diego tries to become a vigilante, ends up getting locked up in a insane asylum. Allison, ends up fighting for civil rights and becomes, and gets married and probably is looking for the stable family life.
Sure.
Vanya, kind of disappears off into obscurity, becomes, the friend of a housewife with that has an autistic kid, and she's basically a helper around the house and nanny at times. Klaus ends up becoming a cult leader,
Quoting song lyrics.
quoting song lyrics, and passing them off as these profound words of wisdom. Which, I mean, yeah, if you go back 60 years and you start quoting a lot of the songs from today, that's what's going to happen, or even songs from the 90s.
Now, Val, don't go chasing waterfalls.
Everybody needs a little TLC in their lives, right?
And it's funny that you say that, because I mean, I think one of the recurring themes for the series as a whole through both seasons is actually exactly what you just said. Everybody does need a little TLC in their lives.
Yes, I was referencing the name of the band that sings.
I know.
Okay.
It just seemed like crazily appropriate that you said it just that way.
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things about the Umbrella Academy, because a lot of the weird little things they kind of stick in there is just crazily appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't need to do it. They could have gotten away with not doing it. But the fact that somebody thought about it, somebody stuck it in there, it adds to the story, it drives to the story, it builds character, it does all these things. And it's just amazing.
Oh, you bet. I mean, there's little touches throughout the season. And I think I saw even more of them in season 2, honestly, than in season 1.
Yes.
Where the little touches, the little additions, small things here and there that show a great level of care about the product, right? It's the writers, the producers, the directors, they're invested in this show, and that really shows through, I think, and it shines and is one of the reasons why I love this show so much.
Well, I think they had, with season 2, they probably had a lot more time to pursue those paths than they did in season 1. Because in season 1, they have to set up the premise and get all the fans involved and get them all invested.
Sure.
With season 2, they're invested. Now we're going to take them on an even longer journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
An even more in-depth journey.
And it's, they do a great job, because we know all the characters now, and they take them deeper, and we get to know them better. One of the things that I was worried about going into season 2, based on the trailer that we saw, is, there were things that, if you're somebody that doesn't like woke entertainment, there were some things here that were potential red flags.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Allison being a civil rights activist, I mean, that had a lot of potential to go way out there. But they didn't. They kept it very respectful and very time appropriate. They focused on, how did the civil rights protests in the 60s, how were they done? And go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciated that too. You can't avoid civil rights in 1963, period.
Right.
Especially if one of your main characters is black. There's no avoiding it. There's no getting around it. That is going to have to be something that you address, and it would be a mistake not to.
Right. And it would be an insult to all parties involved if you pretended that it didn't happen.
Bingo. Oh, absolutely. And, the way it was brought in, I felt like it was very natural to the story. So, Allison is taken in by a group of folks at the hair salon she ends up working at, which is also a place where they have community meetings. And I mean, the reality of being in Dallas in 1963 is she's going to have to gravitate to a group of African Americans. She's not got a choice. That is the only place she'll be accepted, and she finds that acceptance. And not only that, but she ends up finding love.
Right. Yeah.
And her and her husband become active in that local civil rights movement, which I thought was very true to the character for Allison. It didn't feel like something out of who she was. She was used to being in the spotlight. She was used to being in front of people. So becoming a part of something like that, it was very believable for me.
Yes. And she always seemed to be the person that wanted to try to take the moral high ground when possible.
Absolutely. I mean,
and this fit in with that perfectly.
Yeah, bingo. And the restraint that her and her fellow activists showed, I thought was really admirable. And
especially on her part, considering her powers.
Yeah, you bet.
I mean, how easy would it have been to walk into one of those racist places back then and just sit there and say, I heard a rumor you're going to serve me anyway. And that be that.
We did see that once. So, right. I mean, we did, right?
To an extent, yes. She's showing off her powers to her husband, who didn't believe that she had them, until they walk into the suit shop, and she's like, "You're going to let my husband? I heard a rumor you're going to let my husband try on every suit in the shop." And so they basically, I mean, it's the old-fashioned suit maker tailor type of thing. Where everybody's doing the measurements and they're giving them a full treatment, and then they basically do the same thing with her next door in the dress shop, and then they walk into the racist diner,
where they had the sit-in, same place.
Yeah, where they had the sit-in and where everything went to hell, and then they're told to leave.
Then we see why she doesn't use her power very much.
Well, it's like a drug. You saw the look that came over her face. It was when you have that much power over people, you can't just turn it off. It almost becomes a natural thing. And you got to see that in season 1.
Yes.
All the stuff she was regretting, every accomplishment she made as an actress through her career, it was all tainted. Even her marriage was tainted. One of the last things they said in that little bit where she's driving and she's got her inner monologue going back through all the times she rumored people. One of the last ones was, "I heard a rumor that you loved me."
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it's an inner demon for her, right? It's because I mean, try to put yourself in that same situation. If you could do that kind of thing, would you really not abuse that? And
I can't honestly say that I wouldn't abuse it. No.
Yeah. Right. I mean, even if it was for little stuff, right? I don't think many people out there would be capable of not abusing it. And to Allison's great credit to her character, she goes cold turkey off of it for great extended periods of time.
Yes. And it helps a lot when you can't speak, but yes.
Well, okay. Well, that's fair. But even once she got her power to speak back, she hadn't used it at all in the 60s whatsoever.
Right.
And I mean, until her husband was threatened by the police, of course.
Twice,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the first time we get to see her bring that back out, and it's God, that'd be. It's, I mean, to an extent, it can become her addiction, right?
Right.
Which we see yet again in her brother Klaus. And
yes,
for
he
very different reasons, of course. But
although he's got an extremely addictive personality. I mean, all the drugs he's done over the years, and I mean, to an extent, I can say, well, who can blame him? Because when you're basically Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense, as that's got to be a terrifying freaking thing to go through your whole life. You know, especially when your dad locks him in a mausoleum. Come on. No wonder the guy's disturbed.
I don't even want to think about what that would do to me if I was a 13-year-old kid. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
even knowing what it is, how do you not panic, and how does that not mess with you?
Right. Exactly.
So, and then of course, he finds out later that the only way to keep those spirits away from him is of course to be high, to be drunk, whatever it is.
Right.
So it's no wonder
And
he goes down the addiction road.
yeah. So I mean, that's most people that are going down that road. They're just looking for the escape, but the escape is twofold for him. Yeah, it's almost a foregone conclusion from the start.
Yeah, yeah. It would have been a miracle if he wasn't. I mean, in
Yeah.
some ways, right?
It's kind of a miracle he manages to sober himself up as many times as he does for as long as he does. I mean, at the beginning of season 2, he's on what, 3 years of sobriety?
That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And I was disappointed that he broke that 3 years of sobriety, and he did it, over running into Dave, which he did on purpose. I mean, he took himself into that situation.
Yes, he did.
So visiting Dave at the hardware shop that he worked at, I mean, I get why he did it, but
I like to think of myself as a reasonable and logical person, and I know that if I had the opportunity to go back in time and interact with somebody that would be very influential in my life, maybe even somebody I fell in love with, and be able to save them from the fate of dying by making, trying to convince them to make a huge, major life choice decision in the other way. There's a part of me that says, again, me thinking I'm a logical and rational person, there's no way in hell I would reach out to that person, because you don't know what it's going to do to the timeline. But Klaus isn't necessarily a logical and rational person.
That's fair. I give you that all day long. He's, in some ways, he's anything but, right? And I mean, part of my other disappointment, though, with Klaus in season 2, other than the regression into the addiction again, was he was used again as kind of the comedic relief in many ways, and the lighthearted piece within the group, which, I mean, I understand his purpose in that as far as the writing is concerned. The trouble with it, though, is in order to keep him that way, they almost couldn't let his character develop.
Right, and that would have been a huge no-go area. But I think they did a good enough job with the other characters and the certain situations that they were put in and how they responded to them, that they were able to keep a certain amount of levity in the series without making Klaus the butt of all the jokes.
Yeah. No,
like the Oga for Oga, eye for eye.
Yes. Yes.
That was excellent. Had nothing to do with Klaus. It was excellent.
Oh yeah, it was. So, there's a scene in episode 7 where after the Swedes came in, and in retribution for having one of their members killed, they come in and oh gosh, I'm blanking. The guy who was hosting him in his building,
Elliot.
Elliot, yeah. So they
Elliot,
come in. Yeah.
the
So
theorist, the conspiracy theorist.
yeah. So they come in and they kill the conspiracy theorist rather brutally with his father's dental instruments, and they leave that Oga for Oga, written in blood on the floor. And it was Diego and Luther, right? That can't
Yeah, it
figure
was
out what it
Diego and
means.
Luther, and they pull out the white pages and they look up an Olga for Olga, and they call her up on the phone. And Diego's like, let me handle this. And he starts issuing death threats over the phone about, we're coming for you. I'm going to kill you for what you did to our friend. And then Five walks in and says, it's Oga for Oga. It means eye for an eye in Swedish, you idiots. And it was just, yes. Yep.
That scene, I loved it. It was fun. It brought you a little bit of break from the seriousness of what's going on, because I mean they're still trying to avoid Doomsday at this point.
Right.
The nuclear annihilation of the entire world, mutually assured destruction, actually happening. For us old bastards who remember the 80s, that was a real thing. You know. So, yeah, I promise you, Val, that was a real thing.
I was in the 80s. Come on now.
By a few months.
All right now.
That's like me saying I'm from the 70s, brother.
I remember the 80s. I specifically remember certain events in the 80s, at least the ones I was alive for.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to what we were talking about, and something else I want to bring up with that scene. Five walking in and saying, "It means eye for an eye, you idiots," and that reminded me of something else. Sibling bickering is a constant thing in this whole series, first season and second season. And it's really good to see that.
It is. I'm with you there, and it felt right. I think back to my brother and I, or even my sister and I less so, but my brother and I in particular. It was, I mean, a very, very love-hate relationship there when we were kids. There was, a lot of back and forth.
And you or any of your siblings are going to be even more critical than anybody else would be on any of the flaws, but that's just because you're so close. But at the end of the day, you're all going to be there for each other.
Yes.
Because you're siblings.
Yes.
And there's a certain amount of just, at each other's throats, being siblings, but it always comes with that bonding, and it's really kind of an amazing thing to see.
I mean, I believe every minute of it. There is nothing about what happens among the Hargreaves that does not feel genuine to me. It, whether it be what's going on between Allison and Luther, whether it's, Klaus and Diego, the group as a whole, Five
That
and
kind of had
Valgyr.
I'll be honest, the Allison and Luther thing, that kind of had a Flowers in the Attic feel to me when I first saw it, because it was
Elaborate.
Well, Flowers. So Flowers in the Attic is an older movie about these. I can't remember all the specifics, but it basically ended up with the children being locked in the attic, and the oldest boy and the oldest girl end up forming a romantic relationship, which is completely taboo because they were biological siblings.
Sure.
Now, granted, the Hargreaves are all adopted siblings, but there is this.
I can see the parallel.
Yeah, there's this idea that grows in the mind as you are growing up with somebody in a sibling type relationship that immediately builds a taboo wall around any kind of romanticism in that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there. And I see the parallel that you're trying to draw.
Yeah, so it was kind of tough for me to really be thoroughly convinced by the Allison Luther relationship. And And the only reason I think it might have worked in the least little bit is because of the obvious visual differences between Allison and Luther being different skin colors. They are very obviously, or, well, I mean, it's possible, but a lot less likely that they are biologically related and that they were adopted siblings, which may have helped to break down the taboo wall.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and it. I mean, for me, it felt fine, right? Because while they called each other brother and sister, they were raised in an almost military-like fashion, right? Not so much. Not so much as a family, almost like a squad or regiment, whatever term you want to use, as opposed to siblings per se, in the sense that we think about it, at least.
Right.
So let's talk about the 2 5s.
Okay. Are we talking about during that day in 1963?
Absolutely.
The actual showdown?
Well, and what's leading up to it, right? So, I mean, one of the things I was hoping for from this season was that we'd see Old Man 5.
Got your wish, yeah.
We definitely got my wish. Yeah, it was. I mean, we had a couple of episodes spanning where we're dealing with Old Man 5, and in direct contact with the 5 that we know and love, who, I mean, I cannot say enough how great of an actor that kid is. There is never a moment where I do not believe that he is 58 years old.
Oh yeah, no. The actor, who is it?
Aiden.
Gallagher. Aiden Gallagher.
Yeah, Aiden Gallagher. So that kid he has got a bright future in front of him as long as he doesn't get typecast.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely.
So, but he was, seeing him interacting with, and I'll just call him Old Man 5 because I don't know what else to call him, even though he's younger.
He's 14 days younger. Yeah.
14 days. And the two of them interacting with each other and both of them exhibiting exactly what 5 warned Luther to expect was a lot of
7 stages of paradox psychosis.
Yes. and ending with psychopathic murderous rage. Is that
something like that. Let me pull that back up.
But it's a lot of fun because Luther and the 5 that we know are trying to make a plan for how to get everybody back to 2019 because the first couple of plans that 5 hatched failed. And, 5, of course, knows where there's another briefcase that can get them back to where they belong. And the fun in it, in knowing where to go to get it, and then the interaction between these 2 5s, Old Man 5 and the 5 that we know, is, I mean, I believe they're the same guy, which is just a testament to the actors.
Well, I mean, you can only. Oh, yes. Okay, I see what you mean. And yes, absolutely. They even, to an extent, share some of the same speech patterns, as well as mannerisms. It was very, very interesting to see.
Yeah, and that's strong direction. That is strong direction right there. All right, do you want me to bring this up here, John?
Yeah, bring it up.
All right,
so for those that are wondering, the 7 stages of what did I say? Paradox psychosis: denial, itching, extreme thirst and urination, excessive gas, acute paranoia, uncontrolled perspiration, and homicidal rage.
You move your mouse. There you go.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
and and it's great fun. It's just great fun throughout this entire episode to see them go back and forth, with both of them showing, the growing signs.
Yeah. And each of these actors understood how to do those things. And the strength of the direction in this episode is in that they both did it in really the same way, right? Which you'd expect because they're the same guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it should have been synchronized because there's no reason to think it would affect one more than the other. So yeah.
Yeah, and that that list was just outstanding, and they played off each other so well. I mean, ultimately they end up throwing Old Man 5 back through the portal, and of course, there's a question of whether he went through as an old man or whether he also regressed to 13 years old. We never get to see that.
Right.
I mean, our 5 claimed he'd figured out the errors in the calculations, and that Old Man 5 should be able to go through unaffected. But I mean, heck, who knows, right?
Right. And I think that was episode 8 where they actually did the back and forth. Did
9.
No, where they did the fight between 5 and Old 5.
Oh yeah. Well, we had a bit in both episodes. I mean, the fight came down in episode 9, though, didn't it?
No, it's right here. Oh yeah, no, you're right. It's episode 9. Yep. That's right, because the 7 stages was episode 8.
Yes.
Numbers. Yeah, playing the numbers game.
That fight scene was a lot of fun to me, seeing the two guys with the same powers, going head to head against each other, and
with Luther caught in the middle.
I seem to remember a point where both 5s managed to kick Luther right in the jewels.
Right, yeah.
Which was just, I mean, to me, good fun. That was good fun, and the scene played well.
Yeah, most definitely. I actually have it pulled up right here when it's about to happen.
Yeah, so we got to keep this real brief. So we need to be right on the money on the timing.
Yeah, let me get it. Let's see. That's the beginning of the fight. That's some other stuff. Did they go back to the fight?
So John's looking for that moment where the two of them both happen to attack Luther in the same way at the exact same moment. I mean, if you
here it is.
here we go. All right, let's get a quick shot here. So, I mean, that was just a fun scene, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Again, emphasizing this is the same guy, right? Despite being two people in different bodies, it's the same guy doing the same thing and reacting in the same way.
Well, what was fun is even how they started the fight. Is young 5 looks at old 5 and says, "Would you like to do the honors?" And the old 5's like, "No, go right ahead." And young 5 just decks them in the nuts. Luther's crouched over in pain, and then the 5s both simultaneously disappear and start just wailing on each other, or at least trying to. Neither one of them can land a hit.
Yeah, not of any significance, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's fun to see that they're still thinking so similarly.
Oh yeah.
That they both have this thought at the same time, and know that the other one has the thought, and just act upon it without even referencing what it is. Like, do you want to? No, you go ahead. Bam.
Just well done. I mean, it was a fun scene. It was a clever scene, and it was one that for me, just like most of what we see, it's just good fun. It's good television. It's well put together, and I want to see more. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's rewind a little bit and talk about Lila.
Lila. Lila was the unknown. You could almost say that Lila was the star of season 2. The acting was phenomenal. Crazy British lady. So we meet Lila in the asylum where Diego is. And she just kind of seems like one of those, just one of those crazy kind of off the wall chicks.
Yeah, she's. I mean, no hint that she's anything other than another nut in the nut house.
Right. And so conspires with Diego, or tries to. He's trying to just kind of, ignore her and do his own thing, but she keeps kind of tagging along with him as he escapes from the asylum and moves on. And she kind of becomes like his sidekick almost. She's there. She's always helping him.
And to her credit, they don't get out of there without her. I mean, he's not going to get out alone. If Lila was not with him, they don't escape the asylum.
True. And this goes back to one of the other things we talked about with his arm being dislocated. He didn't know how to set it back himself, and she had to do that for him.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was after taking out the guard that Diego was about to try to take on, and just got decked and thrown to the ground. And yeah, so they escaped from the asylum, and it was because Lila was there to help him. She got to meet Five, got to meet Elliot. There was a bit of a romantic scene with her and Diego. Yeah. And really kind of a blossoming relationship there. It's good to see Diego bond with somebody after the loss of his love
Detective
interest. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. No, agree with you completely. And despite what we learn later about Lila, it becomes even more genuine to me once the reveal of Lila's, the first reveal and the second, I suppose, is out there in the open, right? Because we do get two distinct reveals on Lila's character.
Definitely.
So the first being that she's working for the handler, right, and she calls the handler mom. So there's something obviously, unlikely that she's a genetic daughter of the handler. Plus, you never heard anything about it in season 1. And, so for me, I instantly got a vibe that this is not terribly dissimilar from, Sir Reginald and the Academy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it almost seems like the dark side of that type of thing that would happen. It definitely puts some sinister undertones on, on Lila. Double agent, trying to slip in. But the romantic stuff that happened between her and Diego seemed like it was more organic than, say, if she was tasked to sleep with him to get closer to her objective.
Well, we definitely learn later that the handler was not okay with that.
Right.
Later in the season, it always felt genuine and organic, but you learn for sure that it was later. Right.
But to be more specific, I don't think it was necessarily the sleeping part that the handler had a problem with. I think it was the fact that Lila ended up actually developing emotional attachment to Diego.
Oh,
that was what the handler had a major problem with.
Oh, yeah. No, the handler would definitely not have an issue with any of her agents having to go down that road to accomplish whatever their mission was. And it to your point, it was the fact that there really was a genuine something happening there is what was not okay with the handler.
Yeah. So to continue on about Lila, so we get to kind of explore Lila's background a little bit. Her parents were killed by the commission. under at least the supervision of the handler. The handler decided to save her, at least at first glance, and raise her up to be a commission agent, which she has done, so far. But we never see her get one of the little tubes with the instructions in it. All of her direction seems to come directly from the handler. So obviously it seems like she's working with the commission, but not for the commission, if that makes any sense.
Well, sure. I mean, particularly as we find out that after getting demoted upon her return to the commission, the handler decides, she's had enough of taking orders and she's going to be in charge. So it's not terribly shocking that she's got, at least some people, Lila and others, who are loyal to her as opposed to the commission specifically.
Right. And then comes the big reveal with Lila.
I love this.
Well, a couple of ones. First, we need to talk about the lead up. The lead up is Old Man 5 is the one that killed Lila's parents.
Yes.
Okay. Which is extremely important when it comes to driving the plot, because we need a reason for Lila to finally side with the handler against the family. And that's because the family's protecting 5, the murderer of her parents. Which was, according to paperwork, okayed by the goldfish known as A.J. Carmichael.
Order 743, right?
Order 743. That's right. There's a whole episode about Order 743. Or at least the title of the episode. And then comes the big reveal about Lila. And this was one of the greatest, in my opinion, it was one of the great reveals and one of the great scenes, where you've got, well, we kind of skipped over a part that was important, but I guess we can always come back to it.
Step back. No problem.
Well, no, it's following a different plot line, and we'll talk about it later. All right, so everybody's out at the farmhouse where Vanya's been living, right?
Yes. And we can get into Harlan later.
Yeah. So everybody's out at the farmhouse where Vanya's been living. And the handler shows up with Lila. Okay. And Vanya's trying to take care of something. We'll get to that later. So it was 5 and Diego decide to go confront the handler and Lila. Because at this point, Diego knows that Lila's working for the handler. Right. That was established already. And so, yeah, we have this screen, if you want to pull it up, and it's just them standing in the middle of the field.
Yeah, remember we got to keep it really brief.
Yeah, I'm not even going to hit play. I'm just going to do screenshots there. So, yeah, there's the two of them standing in the field. There's a little back and forth about, it's 2v7. You're not going to be able to take us. And, handler basically says, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. And then let me see if almost.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up.
So, okay. All right.
Then we get this.
Yeah, then we get that, and we're going to even the odds a little bit, and that was great, and that sets up for what we're going to talk about next, which is, we got some stuff going down. Okay, Diego and 5 need to get out of there, because they're about to have to go up against every single commission agent there is. It attracts the attention of Vanya, so Vanya is going to go do Vanya things. Levitating, glowy chest, shockwave, knock them all out. And that sets up for the big reveal on Lila. And you got Lila and the handler standing inside of this blue bubble. And it's like, oh crap, what the heck's going on? Why are they still alive? Because everybody else just got knocked out.
I mean, I think they got a little more knocked out myself.
Well, not knocked out in the sense that they are no longer in the fight, but
fair enough. Yeah, they were definitely dead.
yeah. And so you get to see Lila do the exact same thing that Vanya just did. With the blue, with the blue glowing chest, and she releases the shockwave and everything else. And the first impression is, holy crap, somebody else out there has Vanya's powers.
And that was the first thing that pops into my mind too. It was, oh shit. Because
Which
nobody
is really, really scary, because if there were two Vanyas out there that were opposed to one another fighting, it would eventually escalate to both of them using their full power, and that would be the end of probably the solar system.
Easily.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the two of the, yeah. And so, yeah, you get this instant almost, panic or oh shit moment when you've got another Vanya on the field, which is a really big deal. I mean,
Right.
Vanya's got herself under control. Certainly by this point in season 2, she seems to have,
extent, yes,
she's pretty close to full control. Maybe not all the way, but
I don't think she has good enough control to let herself use the full extent of her power. But I think she has enough control that she knows how to let it out in small increments.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I see where you're coming at there. It's just certainly leaps and bounds different than what she was in season 1. That's for damn sure.
Definitely. And so Luther's inside the house, and 5 is inside the house, and the chimney's about to fall, and 5 pushes Luther out of the way, which is a physical impossibility, but we'll let that go.
That's one of those minor sins we can forgive.
Yeah. We'll just, that's okay. That's all right. We know what you were going for. We're going to let you do it. And all of a sudden, just flash, Lila's all of a sudden inside the building.
And she's blinking.
Yeah, and she's blinking like 5 does. And then the thought is no longer, well, she doesn't have Vanya's abilities. She's got Vanya's and 5's. And then Luther goes to punch her, and she blocks Luther's punch. And it's like, so now she has all 3? Is she going to have all of the powers of all of them? What is going on here? And then it clicks.
Yes,
it's a mimic. It's a mimic.
Yeah, she's the mimic, and I loved how she was so talented at that she could shift between their powers, and with at least as much control as they had at the time. Right.
And maybe even more, because she had specific control over her own power. Yes.
Yeah. And, so instant, extremely formidable bad guy.
Right.
So
excellently done with the mimic. But yeah, so now all of a sudden we have this antagonist that is all powerful, has the power of all of our heroes, and how are we going to deal with that person? And the direction they took with it is the logical step. If you got somebody that can match each individual power and fight back, you have 2 options really. Appeal to the emotional side, win them over to your will using reasoning.
Sure.
Or find a way to band your powers together, kind of like they did in I hate to bring up this movie. Oh, I hate to bring up this movie. Fantastic Four. I know. Throw the downvotes. Everybody can hate me, but we have to bring it up because that's exactly how they resolved the whole thing against Dr. Doom. They each had to, they had to combine their powers in such a way, but they didn't have to do that here.
You're talking about when the Human Torch takes on the powers of all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as bad as that movie was.
When you come across an enemy that can counter all of your abilities, that's what you got to do. You got to pile your abilities all into one little pot. So
Sure. I can't believe you brought that up, man.
see, this is your fault. You brought me onto your stream. You didn't know what was going to happen. All of a sudden, I'm bringing stuff up from
It's a live stream,
Fantastic Four.
folks. You never know what's going to happen. One of the worst movies ever made.
But you watched it because you knew what I was talking about.
Who says I watched it?
You knew what I was talking about. But no, they didn't even have to go that route. They appealed. They appealed to logic. They appealed to reasoning as well as the emotional side of it. It's
Sure.
You know, if I was acting under orders, they weren't even official orders. They came from the handler. The handler actually wanted to do this. You are one of us. You belong in this group with us. You know, that was the message. And probably for the first time in her life, Lila got a small taste of what it felt like to possibly belong to a group instead of just being this trained assassin trained up by this extremely cold, bitter woman that she refers to as mum, you know?
Yes. You know, there's an interesting parallel to what you were just talking about in terms of what Lila experienced when the group reaches out to her and tries to accept her, to what happened earlier in the self-same episode when Vanya's getting ready to go to the farm. And initially you think Vanya's going to be alone. Vanya's been the outcast. She's been ostracized her entire life, even from her own family and her siblings. And then they join, they support their sister, and they become a part of what she needs to do. And so you brought that all around when we're confronting Lila. Now,
definitely. And to put that into perspective, what you're talking about there is Vanya at the beginning of season 2. Vanya has lost all of her memories. She's an amnesiac. They never really clarify whether it's from getting hit by the car or if it's from everything that happened at the tail end of season 1. But she's lost her memory. In the process of being investigated by the FBI, and by investigated, I mean actually interrogated and electroshocked, she regains her memory.
Yes.
And she remembers everything. And so after the Kennedy assassination, you know, overarching plot is resolved, they still have something else they have to take care of. Vanya realizes that there's something going on at the farmhouse, and this is what gets them all out to the farmhouse. Vanya realizes there's something going on at the farmhouse. She needs to get there, and then she steps back and says, I need you guys. I need you there with me. Please come help me. And everybody kind of looks at her and says, we've got bigger priorities to deal with right now. And she says, okay, and she walks out and she sits down in the station wagon. And that scene was such an important scene because now she has her memory back. She's remembering everything from when she was a childhood, when she was the outcast, when she was the normal one that didn't have powers and couldn't go on the missions and, you know, everything else. And when nobody was ever there for her.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, and that caused her to be the person that never looked for help, never wanted help, wanted to be left the hell alone. And now she's actually asking because she wants help. She knows she needs help, even though she's got these powers. She's always been one of the family. It just wasn't well, you know, it wasn't well demonstrated by anybody until more recently. And now she's asking for help, seeing who's going to come with her, and nobody says they will. She sits down in the car, about to drive away, and then Klaus shows up.
Klaus shows up.
And Klaus shows up. And then Allison and Diego show up. You got room for 2 more. And then 5 shows up and says and kicks Klaus out of the front seat and says kids in the back, which there we go again with that you know, bringing levity into situations, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, and then Luther shows up. So everybody shows up to support Vanya in this thing that seems to be completely unrelated to the grand scheme of what they need to deal with now. which is finding a way to get back to the future. But they're going to help their sister, and that is so important. And it was so, anyway.
Well, they decided family comes first, right?
Yeah.
At least to an extent. I mean, you do wonder if maybe there might have been some, if we let her go out on her own, she's a ticking time bomb. But, at the end of the day, it comes back to they know that they have to help and protect their sister.
And that's a really good point that you brought up. What is the driving what's the driving motivation behind everybody that decides to come back? Is it the we can't trust our sister out there to not bring about the end of the world if we leave her on her own, because every time we leave her on her own, she pretty much brings about the end of the world? Or is it, this is our sister and we need to take care of her? But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters, because either way they were there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was probably a mixture of the motivations, right? I mean, Allison probably rolled, her and Klaus probably did it purely to support their sister. And I'm thinking that because we look back earlier in the season where the three of them are having the moment in Allison's hair salon, right? And
that was a great one.
Yeah. And they're a bunch of girls bonding, realistically, right? That's what they're doing in the hair salon.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see Klaus and you see Allison come out, and they're definitely there to support Vanya, I think. And maybe as you kind of go down the line of who finally shows up, maybe it gets more of the, I need to stop her from blowing up the world, as opposed to I need to help my sister. But to your point, in the end, it still comes around to Vanya being supported. For one reason or another, she's feeling like she has the support of her siblings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So and so that belonging is what they were trying to share with Lila.
Yes. Now, so here's, for what it's worth, they needed to end there. I understand their selection of their decision for how to end it. I'm going to be honest. I'm not that, for me, was probably the most not believable moment of the show. What was this sort of turn of the switch on Lila? I mean, what are your thoughts?
What do you mean?
Well, that they were able to convince her so quickly, right? I mean, she's getting a little disbelief, Mom, is that true, kind of thing. But it sure seems pretty rapid that she gets there without much in the way of proof.
Yeah. Yes. Except, and you'll see this type of thing a lot in like crime TV shows, especially like Monk would do it a lot. And that is, you have a story in your head of how everything happened, right?
Sure.
And you have supporting evidence that kind of falls in line with it, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody else comes in and introduces a whole new theory that follows a completely different line and storyline of thinking. And the evidence makes a hell of a lot more sense going with that new line of thinking. And I think that's kind of what they were trying to push with Lila and her backstory, and why she had the change of heart. It's not so much that all of a sudden there was all this evidence that pointed to that pointed to what the truth was. It's that the evidence was always there, but it was always being manipulated by the handler's tongue, and none of it seemed to fit right. And it was always kind of like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. And then all of a sudden you've got the Umbrella Academy and, all of the siblings, and they're like, well, no, think about it. This actually means this. These are the chain of events that happened.
You'd say it's more of a they opened her eyes than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, sometimes you need that mirror, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this particular instance, it's like, it just took taking a step back and somebody saying, "Hey, your mom is the manipulative, vindictive bitch. Why have you not noticed all this time?" And then she turns around, looks at her mom, and realizes that yes, her mom is a manipulative, vindictive bitch. So
I, I get it, Val. I see your point, and it's fair. I mean, I don't know. It's still just it felt a little contrived. I get the decision. I'm okay with what they did. It's just, I mean, granted, we're talking about a show with superheroes, but it was the one that was maybe the hardest for me to get there to be fully on board with. That I'm not saying that it was bad. Okay, so don't misunderstand it. Just maybe it could have been a little more elegant. Maybe they could have planted a few more seeds along the way. I mean, Diego definitely had opportunity to, because Diego's familiar with who the handler is, presumably. So it seems like he should have had some opportunity to perhaps plant an idea that this isn't a woman you want to trust.
well, he barely had an idea for who the handler was because, I mean, how much did Five really reveal about the commission and how everything operates?
Okay, no, that's a fair observation. That's fair. I mean, you could have still used Diego to plant some doubt along the way, though. I think, which would have made that conclusion feel a little better to me.
Yeah, yeah, they could have, but I'm not going to fault them on the way they did it because sometimes all it takes is telling the right story.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, don't mistake my minor criticism for not enjoying it, right?
Right.
It's. I mean, no show is going to be perfect. You're not going to fully agree with every decision that they make, and maybe a piece here and there is a little bit of a problem. But I mean, overall, it just enjoyed the hell out of it. I don't. I'm not arguing with the ending. I just feel like maybe they could have done a little bit more to earn it.
Yeah, and I'll agree there.
Yeah.
On the flip side, they were running out of time. Not like season 8 Game of Thrones running out of time, but they were running out of time because at this point we're in the last quarter of the last episode, and they were keeping it to a set number of episodes and a set length.
Sure.
So, yeah, they kind of cut a corner there, but I think it was minor.
Yeah, and it's a forgivable one. I mean, don't misunderstand it. Is there a little bit of a corner cut? Yeah, but it's a forgivable one.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about the final scene.
The final scene.
They've defeated the handler. She's done what she's done.
Well, if we're going to talk about defeating the handler, then we need to back up and talk about how that's done.
Good point, because it was one of my favorite scenes in the season. And I'm glad you stopped me before we move forward further than that. Yeah. So there's a little bit of setup that we need to do before we talk about specifically how they defeat the handler.
Right. So at one point, all of the kids or all of the siblings have a dinner meet with young Hargreaves.
Younger.
Well, okay, yes. 1963 Reginald Hargreaves, where they meet him for dinner. They all kind of show off their powers a little bit, except Klaus, who just kind of spazzes and says, "I'm Ben," and falls on the floor.
But he was.
Well, yes, he was. he was, but from the outside perspective, we didn't. I mean, we knew that Ben was there. Nobody else did.
Yes.
Because Klaus but anyway, so they all have a little bit of back and forth. Some egos get bruised. Reginald basically tells them all to fuck off, right?
I mean, yeah, I'd say that with the one exception, of course, though, is
With the one exception being 5, and I'm trying to remember exactly the way he phrased it, but it was to the effect of, well, you seem to have the most sound head on your shoulders, so I'm going to talk to you for a minute.
yeah.
Join me up here for a drink.
And 5, of course, tells him that's because he's the oldest.
Yes.
which is a useful technique that they use throughout the season, and right, because he tells Hargreaves he's the oldest. Obviously, he still looks like he's a 13-year-old boy, and so and
right.
then the discussion about time travel starts between the two of them.
Yeah. So recognizing that Reginald Hargreaves probably has some sort of experience in it, 5 asks him, "What do you know about time travel?" Reginald says, "In theory," and 5 says, "No, in practice." And so 5 starts talking about all the trouble that he's had trying to time travel using his own abilities. And Reginald says that how was it worded?
I mean,
your appetite is bigger than your power.
Yeah. Your appetite is greater than your ability, I think was the wording.
That was it. That's it. And he says, so what you need to do is you need to start small.
Just a few seconds.
A few seconds at a time.
Yeah.
And then move on. Don't try to start with decades. Do it a few seconds at a time. And then gradually build up.
Baby steps.
It's great advice for anything that you're trying to learn. And it's that almost speaks to 5's personality, because he's the one that wants to run before he can crawl.
Absolutely.
He always has been, and that was even evident in season 1. And here it is again. Old man Reginald is telling 5, "Look, boy, you need to do it this way. You need to follow the same learning curve that everybody else, or at least the same learning path that everybody else follows. And you need to take baby steps with this. You start with a few seconds. Once you get a few seconds down, then you do a few minutes." And so that takes us back to the scene at the very end. So yes. The siblings are standing around. They're kind of, they basically just push Lila over the edge of, you know what? I'm not going to fight all of them. And then the handler walks in with was it a Tommy gun? Was it a Tommy?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the commission has Tommy guns. I mean, without going back and rewatching it again, that's what the memory's saying.
Yeah. Well, either way, fully automatic, some sort of fully automatic weapon. And basically just does a sweep of the room with the fully automatic and takes everybody down. Including Lila and Luther, which we talked about before.
We'll get into this a little bit later, but the fact that she was able to shoot Luther down, in contrast to what happens to him in the first episode of the season, that's something I want to talk about, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So, everybody's dead.
Yeah, almost, right? I mean, 5 is almost still just hanging on.
Yeah, so the last Swede shows up, and I'm trying to remember exactly what happens there, but it's inconsequential, because 5 is thinking, he's remembering back to that conversation with Hargreaves, seconds at a time. Seconds can mean the difference between life and death, which was something else that was said at the bar there. So 5 starts to rewind time, and this is such a cool scene. 5 starts to rewind time on everything that's happening, and you can see it all happening in reverse. But while the entire scene is happening in reverse,
he's moving across space.
Yeah, 5 gets up and starts running across the room and stands just on the inside of the door where the handler shows up and mows everybody down.
And one of the key things that I liked about this, Val, is it's a completely new evolution of how Five can use his power. Because it wasn't a jump or a blink. It was a controlled move.
Right. It was very deliberate, very controlled, and didn't involve the spasmodic teleportation that we always see Five use. And I mean, that almost speaks to the maturity behind it.
Yes. He's finally done it, right? I mean, he's finally taken a step that Hargreaves was trying to get him to take 45 years ago.
Right.
You know, he's finally done it.
So the handler comes in, immediately gets disarmed by Five, who's standing right on the other side of the door.
And everybody lives.
The sweep shows up, and
except the handler.
Except the handler, who gets taken out by the Swede. What did you think of the Swedes?
You know, the Swedes, they were the. That's a good question. Well, because it's hard to express what I think about them or how I feel about the Swedes, right? There's one level of me where I hear some other people who comment on culture talking about how the only bad guys are going to be able to be 6 foot tall blonde guys in gray jumpsuits. And ironically, that does somewhat describe the Swedes.
Well, except for the one in the milkman costume.
Well,
or the milkman getup.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. You know, so there's a concern among those, in particular, people who are a little worried about woke culture invading everything, that the only bad guy you're ever going to have is somebody who looks just like the Swedes. Right. So you get a little, like some comments that I was hearing on that and other people's videos, you know, almost really prescient about the introduction of the Swedes and how they look and who they are. They're practically.
Well, before you move on from that, I mean, yeah, the 6 foot tall Anglo, you know, blonde and blue, that is an ongoing trend. But I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've actually seen Swedish be used as the nationality. I mean, we've seen the Germans, we've seen the Russians. Those are actually both Die Hard movies.
It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off Nakatomi Plaza. I'm just going to say that right now.
Oh, but that was Alan Rickman. We've seen Austrian. We've seen. I mean, we've seen a lot of different nationalities, but I don't think we've actually seen Swedish.
I agree with you. It's more. It's not so much the country origin as it is, you know, the visual appearance more than anything else, right? And so there's concern among certain folks that, you know, that's the only thing you're going to be able to portray a bad guy as before too long. And, you know, so not going to lie that my radar went up a little bit when I see that personified in the Swedes throughout the season. Now, that being said, they do play their role rather well. It's interesting how stoic they are overall. You get very little emotion out of them for the most part throughout the interplay over the course of the season. They are similar to what we saw out of Hazel and Cha-Cha. I mean, these guys are killing machines. No doubt about it. You know, the only sort of inkling of emotion we even get out of these guys is they don't seem to necessarily dislike all the cats. And then, of course, when one of their brothers is killed, there's a desire for revenge.
Right. But they have absolutely no problem with hitting each other with throwing knives.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they and what I'm referring to there is they've got their own, you know, version of the don't flinch game, where I guess the two lesser brothers, the two that didn't survive, you know, towards the very beginning, are playing this game where they're standing like 2.5 feet from each other, and they're throwing this throwing knife back and forth, you know, trying to hit each other in the leg with it without breaking eye contact. And it's just like, all right, Weird
And
games assassins play.
I guess you know, it was definitely it was. I mean, it was both sort of weird and out of left field and strangely appropriate at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things I absolutely love about the Swedes throughout the entire series, they only say one word.
And
Any
what
of them.
word is
It was the Swedish word for enough, and it was spoken by the main one in the very last scene inside the barn.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Five. Did the Swede speak first, or was it five? I don't recall.
uh, was it 5 or was it Luther? No, it
Yeah.
was 5 because he's the one that actually had the gun.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, 5 said enough and put the gun down, and the Swede looked around and said enough and put his gun away and walked away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the only word I remember any of them speaking either.
Right.
Because even when the handler's with them in the spa, she's just speaking to them.
Yep.
She's not speaking, conversing with them.
Right.
Yeah, they were.
Lavender.
Yes. Yes. And you know, that was, I mean, I like the Swedes. I think that the actors did a good job. The portrayal as, I mean, did you in some ways get a little bit of maybe a Terminator vibe off of those guys?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I got more of a vibe along the lines of when you see the 90s, 80s and 90s assassin movies, there's
Sure.
always this one assassin that just doesn't talk. That's the vibe I got. And because they're usually Eastern, or not Eastern, they're usually European.
True. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, they were a good addition. I liked the role that they played in the season. It's impressive that the actors were able to tell us a lot without saying a word. Their facial expressions, their body language said as much as any dialogue they could have had.
Right. Yeah, and it was a superb execution of the characters on all 3 of the actors' part. Because yes, dialogue and emotion and everything else, and it was all transmitted very well, able to be picked up by all the viewers without actually speaking a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the one word they did use at the very end, or the one word the one Swede used at the very end, was so powerful because they spent the entire series not talking.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to have them say one word, it better be an important one. Right. And that one was agreeing with 5 that we're cool.
Yeah.
So it's you know, there's so much on my mind about this season that it's so easy to transition from topic to topic, right? But we got on this in order to prepare to discuss the final scene, right? So
Yep.
so we've settled thing with the handler, we've settled things with the Swedes, and they've got all of a sudden, as they're leaving the barn and everything's getting ready to wrap, Herb pops up.
Yep.
Let's talk about Herb a little bit.
Herb is. Let's get a picture of Herb up there. Herb's just a great guy. I don't have him pulled up on mine, but
I can share it for you.
Herb is. I mean, you got to meet Herb in season 1. You remember?
I do not.
Herb was the guy that sat catty corner, kind of in front of and to the left of 5 when 5 went back to work for the commission, and he was handed the Hindenburg project. Herb was jealous.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Of 5's success, because 5 got the commendation, figuring out that if he killed this one butcher guy, then his son was going to take over and give the one guy food poisoning, which was going to delay the launch, which was going to cause something else to happen, and boom, Hindenburg. Right?
Yes.
So 5 got this, verbal attaboy in front of all of the controllers there, and Herb was, visibly jealous.
Yeah. Yes.
And so it was nice to see Herb come back because, besides the very talkative woman that sat behind 5, whose name I can never remember, those were the only 2 that really had any kind of character at all in that room. So it was good to see Herb come back. It was also nice to see her come back, but it was good to see Herb come back. And it was really, really fun to see him become the manager of the handler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there he
here's
is.
little Herb.
There's Herb.
He is quite the character. I really his he's so unassuming and non-assertive, and then you see him, at the end there become the acting leader of the commission.
Yeah, the acting chairman. He was
Yes.
elected acting chairman.
Yeah. And
but I mean, he knew the business inside and out. He
Lord,
helped
yes.
Diego.
Yes.
He also seemed to kind of be the leader of the La Resistance, or what was it?
The resistance, right? Yeah.
The resistance against the handler. They actually had a name. I just can't remember what it was. Because Diego ended up mentioning the group later on. He's like, I did all this. I know about the commission. 5's like, you don't know anything about the commission. Shut up. You remember that fight?
I do. Yeah, I do. Although, interestingly, though, Diego may have been more right than 5 when he made that statement, right? Because he had been involved in there with the people who were actively working what would be considered the most current version of the commission while we're going through season 2. Whereas, 5, had been out of it for, granted, it's only a couple of weeks, but a lot changed in those couple of weeks.
Yeah. It was closer to 1 week, but yeah, a lot has changed in those couple of weeks.
Well, a couple of weeks for 5, it was a lot longer than that for the commission.
Oh, yeah, because it was 2 months for the handler.
Yeah, we see it was 2-3 months for the handler. After she got yanked out just before the apocalypse, they're taking her because the commission goes and collects its own. She wakes up 3 months later, she walks back into the commission and she's demoted working for her. So a greater amount of time passes at the commission than we see our characters go through.
Yes. And so, yeah, that speaks to your point that Diego has a much better idea in the current state of affairs and the current operations of the commission than 5 did.
Yes.
Because, yeah, it's perfectly understandable. I'll take a recent snapshot of one particular thing rather than 20 years experience that's a year and a half out of date.
Yeah. Just look at what happens when we change administrations in any government, right? What you knew 2 years ago could be completely different from how things are working now.
Yep.
And it's same thing here when you got an entity, for lack of a better word, like the commission. So they're going out though, and this is all prepping you to talk about sort of that final scene that we see. And Val, why don't you cue up that silhouette shot?
There you go.
So they're leaving the barn after everything's settled, and they run into Herb, and he lets them know that he's the acting chairman of the commission. And they tell Herb that they need a briefcase.
And Herb says, take whichever one you want, because all the commission agents are on the ground with all their briefcases.
So yeah, grab one, guys, whatever you want to.
Yeah, so now they can safely time travel and get to where they want, when they want. And so where are they going to go? They're going to go back to the academy the day after the apocalypse, which is exactly what they do, April 2nd, 2019. Yeah. Okay. And they get home, they're inside the academy, they see Hargreaves, hey, we're home. This is not your home. Yeah. And then you got this shot, which it's kind of hard to see because there's a little bit of glare on it, but you've got 5 silhouettes in this box and Ben's on the ground with them.
But not the Ben we know.
Not the Ben we know. This is a this is almost like a cyberpunk looking Ben. Let me see if I can find him.
He does look a little
Yeah.
emo. Yeah. He's got a little bit of a it's a totally different looking Ben, but more importantly, this Ben's alive.
Yes.
This Ben is not dead. He is a living, breathing Ben who does not have any idea who the 6 members of the Academy are.
Right. There he is.
All right, we'll take a quick look at Ben. So this is our new Ben right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Totally different. Obviously, this is a completely different guy with different life than the Ben that we know. So everything you know about Ben from the past, throw it out. Other than it's probably safe to assume he's got the same powers. But other than that, this isn't the same guy.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty safe assumption. Now, something to keep in mind here, Ben from the Umbrella Academy is gone. Okay.
Yes.
He gave himself up while trying to bring Vanya basically out of the recesses of her mind during the basically the resolution of the Kennedy plotline,
Yes.
where she's in the middle of it being interrogated while gaining her memory back, and her power starts to erupt from her, and all of her siblings are trying to get to her, and the only one that doesn't have a corporeal body that gets blown back by her power is Ben. So he goes and kind of possesses her, goes into her mind, tracks her down, and says, "Look, yeah."
Yeah.
I don't remember what he says.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, right? So he reaches her, like you said, in the recesses of her mind, and which is represented by the white violin itself, and she's deep down in the violin. And
yeah, that was a nice touch. I've forgotten about that.
It was a great touch. It symbolized her as the violin itself, really.
Well, in the source material, she is known as the White Violin.
Yes, which was a good callback, and it's another one of those nice touches that they weave into the story throughout the season that show the attention to detail and the care that they have for what they're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ben's in there. He embraces Vanya to calm her down and bring her out of the situation, because she's been getting tortured by the FBI, or well, we assume they're the FBI. They may or may not be.
They're the FBI.
They're government for sure.
Yeah.
And he's able to pull her out of there and resolve that part of the Kennedy assassination plot line. But the Ben that we see here at the end, this is not that same Ben, because he's gone. He's sacrificed himself to pull Vanya off the brink.
Right. So yeah, this new Ben is obviously looks very different. Probably going to have along the same skill set, but he's not going to have any knowledge or history with any of the members of the Umbrella Academy.
Yes, and Sir Reginald tells us now he knows all of these members of the Umbrella Academy when they arrive. He even makes some comment to the effect of he wondered when they'd show up, right?
Yeah. It took you long enough.
Yes. Yeah. And he tells them that they tell him they're glad to be home or whatever, and he tells them it's not their home. He knows who they all are because of their meeting in 1963, and he knew they were from 2019, so of course he was expecting them. But he reveals that they're standing in the Sparrow Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And we get that image of the silhouettes on the balcony plus Ben below, which, I mean, to me, we're obviously seeing an alternate timeline, something of a parallel from where the Umbrella Academy came from, right? You've got 6 live members of the Sparrow Academy. How many live members do we have of the Umbrella Academy?
Well, you'd have to kind of call into question the definition of alive. Because if you look at the silhouette, there are 5 people standing up on the balcony, and then there's a glowing green box. Now, if that glowing green box is at all some sort of entity that is a member of the team, then the Sparrow Academy has 7 members.
Fair observation. I didn't get the impression that it was some type of living entity in the sense of a member of the Academy, you know, a sentient being with powers and things like that. I mean, hell, I don't know, right? I mean, it's my understanding there's a little bit of a reference to both that box and Sparrow in the Hotel Oblivion source material, but I haven't read it, so it you
Right,
know
neither have I.
I'm not well positioned to comment on that.
But with the way it's presented on the balcony with the other five, it makes me think that this is a member of the team. You know,
Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait and find out on that, I think.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's a fair point. I mean, to me, though, I see 6 members of the Sparrow Academy. I'll grant you we don't know what the box is, but I'm going with 6 people, right?
Okay.
So we got 6 people, just like we've got 6 people from the Umbrella Academy. So we've now got a team of 12.
Unless they're at odds with each other.
Which it could be.
Yes.
They could easily.
From Hargreaves' point of view, these 6 people have stalked him in 1963. They're time travelers. The young one kept talking about time travel and kept talking about apocalypses. You know, and what do you have to gather from that? Well, maybe these 6 be causing the apocalypse, and the world is barely scraping by as it is. Having these 6 around, I need to make a team that's going to take these guys out.
Could very well be, which would also explain why none of the same people were recruited for Sparrow as were recruited for Umbrella.
Right.
Right. Well, the exception being Ben, of course, but Hargreaves never met Ben.
Well, knowledgeably.
He didn't know that.
Yeah. He didn't knowingly meet Ben.
Yeah, he wasn't aware. He wasn't aware that Ben was there at the dinner meeting. So it's seeing, you know, a different cast of characters there waiting for them at the Academy it's a good point that you bring up. Maybe they have been put together intentionally to oppose the Umbrella Academy, because Hargreaves' underlying motivations haven't changed. He wants to prevent the apocalypse. Do we understand? Right. Do we understand why? No, not precisely. I mean, we do get the scene at the end of season 1 where he's leaving an apocalyptic type situation as he's leaving his love behind, and you see the rockets taking off, and you see the sparkly firefly like power coming out of the jar that he lets loose. And the only thing we really know for sure about that scene is it was a long time ago. That's all we know for sure. A lot of speculation. Was it another planet? Lots of options as to what that was.
Even still, we're only assuming that it was that long ago. There's nothing in there to imply that he has or has not some way to travel faster than the speed of light.
No.
So,
a long time ago could also mean in the lifetime of Reginald Hargreaves.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean in our timeline.
Right.
Right. From our perspective of, 2020 Earth. Because
we do see visible aging on Hargreaves himself between 1963 and the present day.
And between 1928 and 1963, for that matter.
Yes. Although he certainly doesn't look 90 years old in 2019.
Definitely not.
And he wasn't even, a newborn then. He looked to be a man in his 20s. So he didn't look 110 years old.
Yes. Right? What we know for sure about him is he is very old. Yes. Right? Beyond that, we don't know a lot. We do get...
And he's an alien.
Well, yeah. Thank you. That is where I was going. Right? So there's a small subplot relating to the Majestic 12 that runs through season 2, and we learn that Hargreaves is a part of the Majestic 12, and you think that he's in on their plans and whatever they're up to. And after Kennedy is successfully assassinated, Hargreaves is pissed.
For the conspiracy buffs out there, good luck Googling the Magnificent 12 or the Majestic 12 after this episode is aired.
Because you're getting flooded with things like this YouTube video instead of what the M12 was.
I tried to re-up my knowledge on the Frankel footage. Yeah, no. Just let it go. Let it go.
For at least a month or two, it's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody on YouTube, for ruining my search results.
I do my best, Val. So we see Hargreaves roll into this meeting of the Majestic 12 right after they've killed Kennedy, and they're congratulating each other. They're toasting with champagne. They're having a good old time, right? And this is where the biggest reveal on Hargreaves to this point occurs, right? And he flips out on these guys, and he tells them, that Kennedy wasn't to be touched, and which, really a good reveal, because they've been trying to build you up to that point to think that Hargreaves was in on the assassination.
Right. Well, he never specifically denies it.
Yes.
He was asked pointedly, "Are you in the middle of a nefarious plot to assassinate the president?" And he always says things along the lines of, "What makes you think that? I do nefarious things all the time."
Yes.
Never confirming nor denying.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we know definitively, though, that he had nothing to do with it.
Well, he did, but not knowingly. He didn't know that it was actually going to result in the assassination of Kennedy.
Right.
He just thought he was working on, I don't know, something else.
Well, we hear what it is that he cares about and why he's helping the Majestic 12. So we learn that he's been giving them technology. We've seen that he's got blueprints. In 1963, his office has got blueprints of the space shuttle in it. We see lots of other tech and things like that in there when Grace, butts into his office.
Right.
And then he talks about how, he's been given that tech to the Majestic 12 to help keep him ahead and moving, and, threatens that he's not going to do any of this anymore after they went against his wishes and they killed Kennedy. And that's when you get, that's when we find out this guy's not human. You want to get into that, Val?
And not even really humanoid. I mean, you described him as a lizard person at one point in our offline talks, right?
Yeah. I was thinking back on that because in my rewatch, I haven't gotten back to that scene yet. Was it more lizard-like, or was it more of an insectoid?
I took it to be more amphibian-like, not necessarily lizard-like, because it didn't look like a reptile. Because the skin was just appeared to be too slimy.
Yeah, and it was kind of amber colored, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I can try to pull it up. It'll take me a few minutes, but
we'll get to that another time. The important thing is he ain't human.
He definitely a human. He is definitely an alien. And you know what? Now I'm remembering immediately what it reminded me of. Men in Black. You remember the opening scene of Men in Black, okay?
Yeah.
Where they're doing the illegal immigrant stop.
Yes.
And they pull the one off to the side, and then the non-MIB guy comes up over the ridge, and he looks down. He sees that it's an alien they're talking to, and the alien turns around and sees him, and he's got these little flappers on the sides of his face. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. That's what it reminded me of. It looked like that from the backside.
Yeah.
Except for it was a different color.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. It's but yes. So Reginald is a straight up non-human, and he proceeds to murder the Majestic 12.
Yes.
Because they try to blackmail him, and they say, "Oh, you keep giving us tech, and we're going to leave your interests on the far side of the moon alone."
Yep.
And let's talk about the questions that raises.
Most importantly, what the hell is Reginald doing on the dark side of the moon?
Right?
Which is a terrible way to phrase it, because, I mean, it is the side of the moon that doesn't face Earth.
Sure.
It's not necessarily the dark side of the moon because it is lit up at times, but we never get to see it lit up because it's always facing away from Earth. But anyway, so something's going on the opposite side of the moon from us that we can't see.
And Reginald's in it. He's got something there. We have no idea what it is. Even Luther, who Reginald sent to the moon, has no idea what this is, because that's not where
or even that it exists.
Or even that it exists. Yes.
Yeah, and we know that because Luther could see the Earth.
Yes. If he can see the Earth, he's clearly not on the far side of the moon where Hargreaves' other assets are. Or at least they were. They were in 63. I suppose we don't know in 2019.
Yeah. There is always the possibility that he got them moved to the other side of the moon, and then it was just a listening outpost for Spaceboy to go hang out on.
It's a possibility. It is a possibility. So, I mean, we're at almost a couple of hours here, Val. So we should probably come to a wrap pretty soon. But give me, before we wrap, why don't you give me your top 3 moments from season 2 and your boldest prediction for season 3.
Okay, so let's start with the boldest prediction of season 3. Okay.
All right.
And granted, I believe that this is a pretty safe prediction, even though it's kind of bold. It certainly is assumptive. We're going to get into another causality paradox, like we talked about at the beginning of the series, or at the beginning of this stream. I'm pretty sure that it's going to stem from conflict between the Sparrow Academy and the Umbrella Academy. Okay, and we're going to have cataclysmic forces fighting against each other, and it will be resolved. Obviously in the last 10 minutes of the end of the season, it'll be resolved by hey, we should probably stop fighting, because if we continue, it'll just destroy the planet, and that's what we're trying to avoid anyway.
All right. Bold prediction. Sparrow and Umbrella fight, and then they kiss and hug because they're about to blow up everything.
Yeah. About. And of course, there's going to be a bunch of unnecessary drama that's going to drive. I mean, not necessarily unnecessary, but there's going to be a bunch of extra drama that's going to drive character arcs as well as individual little plot lines. Just manufactured problems for everybody to solve in the process.
All right, 3 favorite moments from season 2.
Favorite moments from season 2. I know we've brought up some that I just loved. That might be something we have to come back to.
All right, fair enough. Give me one. One. It doesn't have to be your favorite moment, but one that you really loved. And it can be, you can rehash something we already said.
Yeah, I've got to think, because my mind has been all over the place since we started this thing.
We have been back and forth and all over. I'll agree with that.
Oh, here we go. The hairdresser dancing scene.
The hairdresser dancing scene.
The hairdresser dancing scene. Absolutely. Because you get to see each of the characters, that's Allison, Vanya, and Klaus, in very, very pure forms, expressing themselves through dance. Again.
Yes.
And I mean, they're synchronized, but at the same time, they're each their own person and just showing that off so well. Vanya with her tomboyish kind of, a little bit of an outcast, very introverted type of person. Klaus with his drug-addled mind. And then Allison with her, almost stereotypical 1960s housewife.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm with you. That was a powerful scene. I think I referred to it earlier as, the girls out having fun together.
Yeah.
And it, I enjoyed it. It was a great scene. I'm glad you picked that one because it's a good one.
And another thing that I absolutely loved about it is it reminded me of in season 1 when they did the same thing with I Think We're Alone Now, where they did the whole mansion cutaway and everybody's dancing in their own room.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was reminiscent. It was reminiscent of that without copying it.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, something else. I thought of one of the other ones that I was trying to remember.
All
okay.
Right.
When Luther and Allison meet for the first time in the 60s. They did such a subtle thing. I mean, it was so subtle. You might have even missed it because I know we haven't talked about this. Okay. When they first see each other and Luther kind of stands up because he's been stuffing his face with barbecue. Okay. And Luther kind of stands up and they see each other and she steps closer to him and it's a shot of both of them and all the extras in the scene are gone.
Yes, they used a similar touch in season 1 with the dance, right?
Yes, they did.
It's just the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was it was a blink and you miss it almost, and it conveyed their emotion just as much as their own faces did.
Yes,
it was a smart editing and directorial decision.
Oh, it was genius. I loved it. It was great.
Outstanding. So, bold prediction for season 3. Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! So, I'm going to go with something of a bit of a long shot, and I'm going to say that for one reason or another, related to the apocalypse, that Sparrow and Umbrella are going to have to kill Hargreaves. That's my bold prediction for season 3.
That is bold.
They're going to have
it.
They're going to have to kill Reginald in order to prevent the apocalypse, because it's going back to the same reasons that 5 kept causing the apocalypse in season 1 and season 2. So he was sort of the initiating factor in each of the previous 2 seasons that we've seen now. But who was behind 5? It was Hargreaves, right? So I think we're going to hit the point in season 3 that to resolve whatever causality paradox we're going to be presented with there, it's going to require taking him out.
Yeah, but that would wrap up the entire series.
I would be surprised if they go beyond season 3. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love if they did, because I love this show. I want more. Give me more. Give me more right now. Give me season 3 tonight. I will watch it, and we will do a stream just like this tomorrow. Okay.
Well, no, I got to work tomorrow.
I mean, that's how much I love this show, right?
Yeah.
You drop season 3 tonight, and I'm watching it. And the last thing I want is for it to end. But you have to make a decision about when the right time to end your project is. And I think that, obviously we are going to get a season 3. I don't think there's any question about that. But it might be smart of them to close the loop and end it at season 3. And I think a great way to do that, my bold prediction is the death of Reginald Hargreaves again, but at the hands of Sparrow and Umbrella in order to save the world in season 3. That's my guess.
But when?
it'll have to be at the end, right? It'll be the culmination, and
No. I don't mean when in the series. I mean when in the timeline.
Oh, good question. I'm not going to go that far. So, but I to your point though, if they do it in the right point, in the right moment, they can eliminate all the causes of each of the apocalypse by perhaps even undoing themselves if they do it right. And that could be a very bittersweet and difficult, but artistically gutsy way to close things out.
But it also still leaves the door open because they have already established the multiple timelines idea.
Yes.
Especially with Hargreaves and creating the Sparrow Academy instead of the Umbrella Academy. Hargreaves isn't dead. Going back in time and killing Hargreaves at an earlier point in time will just create another offshoot in the timeline.
Which appears to be how time travel works in this universe.
Yes.
For sure.
So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what the writers do. Very much look forward to it. I guess we'll find out in 2021.
Boy, I sure hope it's that soon.
Yeah.
I got a feeling it's going to push more to 2022, but by God, if they can get it in the end of next year, I'll be a happy man.
Yep.
All right. And then favorite moment from the season for me is going to be, we get it early in the season, and it's when Diego is chasing down a guy in a hat and a coat. He doesn't know who it is, and the two of them fight. Diego throws his knife at the guy, and you see him, Neo on it, right? And it goes right over him, sails into the post next to him, and it turns out this is Hargreaves, and then he shanks Diego. That for me was just so well done, and I loved it because the old man is still showing the kids up, in every way possible. He is still ahead of them. He is still better than them in some ways.
And he's still got the mouth on them to put them in their place verbally right after putting them in their place physically. Because amateur.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was to me, that was among my absolute favorite seasons or scenes of the season. And just loved the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, that was a very good scene. Of course, you can't skip over 5 getting scratched by Pogo. Which was in the same scene.
Came at the same time. That was very good. And I loved how they gave us the background and the origin of Pogo, how he came to be. That was a good
yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
Time. So we really probably should wrap up. We have been going on and on and on for
2 hours now.
Yeah, well over 2 hours now. I mean, I could talk another 2 hours, but I'll just be completely honest. I got to pee. So,
all right.
So we'll close it out here. Before we go, Val, do you have anything you want to plug? Your Twitch stream, anything?
I haven't really started setting up my identity yet, but if I get featured at a later date, I'll probably have something set up by then. So at the moment, no, but I appreciate the offer. You betcha. And, hey, I'm usually going to be begging for plugs myself. So I figure out, I've learned from people who know what they're doing that you always ask that. So, yeah. Well, excellent. For those of you who've stayed with us, we've varied anywhere between 0 and about 6 people watching at any given time on the stream. For everybody who made it this far, I just want to give you my most heartfelt thank you. Very much appreciate that you listen to what these two guys have to talk about. It's among our favorite shows on TV right now. And clearly it must be yours as well if you've watched all the way through 2 hours and 10 minutes of the stream. And what I would ask you from the bottom of my heart is please like the video, share it with your friends. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel and set your notifications to all. It's the best way for you to see when any new content comes out. Val will continue to be a guest at times on the channel, and I'll be bringing out some season 2 episode by episode reviews to the channel very soon. In the meantime, thank you all, and I hope you have a great day. Have a good one, guys.